Alright guys, before I get into things, I want to give you a little bit of a backstory. Around September 15th, 2017, a protest was brought on from the acquittal of St. Louis, Missouri cop Jason Stockley for the unjust murder of Anthony Lamar Smith. Now that you guys are somewhat caught up, let's really get into what happened that night. As of now, there's 4 cops involved in this investigation, and not to mention the personal and city filed lawsuits. The 4 cops being held responsible are Chris Myers, Dustin Boone, Randy Hayes, and Bailey Coletta. Chris Myers' text read, "Let's whoop some ass tonight." Then there's Dustin Boone. He quoted, "It's going to be fun beating the hell out of some shitheads after the sun goes down." Then there's Randy Hayes. He said, "Going rogue sure does feel good." Now these cops supposed to be here to serve and protect, when clearly they got other things in mind, and all that authority has went straight to their head. Alright, so on with the story. Well, it turns out that the group of 4 cops beat down a 22-year veteran cop who was undercover that night. The vet cop was following orders, but the beating was already planned, regardless of the circumstances. Reportedly, after the cops realized that they beat up one of their own, they then tried to force the vet, whose name was Luther Hall, to keep quiet about the situation and all that happened. So, in my mind, apparently, the 22 years of enforcing laws on innocent people who want to be left alone finally caught up with Luther Hall, as he got to see what things were like on the receiving end of unjust law enforcement. And guys, just for reference, this wasn't a simple, get down on the ground and handcuff the guy and just, a little bit of abuse. This was actual physical beating of a person. They used batons, they kicked him, they punched him. And even though the vet that was undercover was following orders, he was just an innocent bystander. He wasn't being violent. He wasn't doing anything besides standing there and holding his place and watching over people. When these cops come up to him, and they are the ones who started the fight, and they ended the fight. Luther Hall was eventually taken to an urgent care, and then later to a triage, where he was bandaged up, and now he's filing a lawsuit. These 4 cops lied under oath to the feds about the account of that night. And to beat it all, no pun intended, all 4 of these cops give a not guilty plea.
Officers Bailey Coletta and Randy Hayes, Christopher Myers, and Dustin Boone all told a federal judge today they are not guilty. They're accused of beating one of their own colleagues, mistaking him for a protester, September 17th of last year. These were the protests after last year's acquittal of former St. Louis police officer Jason Stockley, who was captured on dash cam shooting and killing Anthony Lamar Smith after a 2011 police pursuit. The acquittal led to weeks of protests, which activated the St. Louis Police Civil Disobedience Team. That's where the defendants come in. The federal indictment says the accused officers expressed disdain for the Stockley protesters and excitement about using unjustified force against them and going undetected while doing so. The indictment even lists text messages among the officers, like this one reportedly from Christopher Myers. "Let's whoop some expletive." Dustin Boone is documented to have texted, "It's going to be a lot of fun beating the expletive out of these expletives once the sun goes down." Randy Hayes reportedly texted, "Going rogue does feel good." The indictment says once the officers realized they beat up one of their own men, that they tried keeping him from talking about it. Officer Bailey Coletta is accused of lying to the feds about it. The officers and their attorneys had no comment as they walked out of court today, pleading not guilty. The St. Louis Police Department has placed the officers on unpaid leave.
Once Luther Hall was released from medical care, he returned back to police headquarters, where he was met by the captain, Joe Salvaggio. Upon arrival, once they got into an elevator, Captain Joe had to make a smart aleck remark. He quoted, It looks like they messed up your pretty little face. So according to Captain Joe, it seems like this whole ordeal was just a big laughing matter. And here's another example of how much Captain Joe really cares. One of the cops that participated in the beating, Joseph Marcentand, I believe, I probably butchered the guy's name, but Joseph has been promoted to sergeant, and St. Louis cannot figure out why they can't get past the Ferguson incident. Unjust force never did have a good ring to it in my book. Guys, that's all I got for now, but make sure and subscribe to my channel because there's a part 2 to this video. New, recent, up-to-date lawsuits out the yin-yang. And I mean, it's getting crazy. So guys, I appreciate you watching the video. And until then, I will see you all in the next one. And guys, before you go, maybe check out some more of my videos. Make sure to leave this video a thumbs up. And I appreciate it, everybody who subscribes to the channel. And I will see you all in the next video.